So I said initially I thought about publishing a book, but then this became a blog. And then I also wanted to incorporate other elements to have more like education, providing tools for other artists, and also to open up some debate and push more experimentation. And then it was a rather long process to like develop this concept, plan everything out, and get the people together. And then I did a grant application with the Flemish Government, which was accepted for last year. That was 2023 up until now. And during that same period, so the first half of 2020, I got to know composer Brandon Lincoln Snyder, and he had some similar ideas in mind. And it's also partly through conversations with him and with people I got to know through his Browser Festival that WebSoundArt took the shape it has now. And he's also an active member of WebSoundArt community, so I would like to give him the credit he deserves in fostering this platform. But he couldn't be here today himself, unfortunately. So I'd like to talk a bit about maybe distinction between web and net art that I've made, because maybe some questions that sometimes come up, like, is this net art? Like, was it not called net sound art or so? But yeah, I think it is because I really wanted to exclude sort of those works that do not take place on the web, because I think net art could be seen as a broader category. Also could incorporate like a more diverse set of art forms. For example, you could see like an installation that deals with the internet, or that talks about the internet as a tool or as a concept, also as net art. But web art really is more about artworks that are presented on the web, which of course websites are, like the web is being made possible from the internet. And artworks that choose a website as a medium could also be seen as net art, but I don't think it works as well the other way around. And of course, that also doesn't mean that I think every website is a web art, or not all sound works distributed on the internet are web sound art. That's a bit my thoughts. And I think that's why I call it web sound art. So now I'll go more into really the project, talk about the primary goals, and give a short overview of what happened during the last year. So I already touched on it a bit, but there were like threefold goals. So first one was to really encourage reflection on web sound art, and to foster a creation of new web-based sound art, to foster experimentation. And a third goal was also the creation of a community, which is something I will elaborate a bit on later. But the other goals were like achieved through a blog and workshops and an open call. And I would call these the core elements of the platform. So on the blog, now a total of 23 articles have been released, and the last one will be published next week. So here you can see an overview of the authors and the topics, more or less. So I like spaced out the people depending on the topics they talked about. There was some talk about like theory and aesthetics, also with examples of web sound art. Jana did some interviews with artists who work on the web. And then there were also coding tutorials done by several people. And some talk also about the technicalities more of web audio, which is also important aspects. The workshops that happened also went further into this, like the coding tutorials. And we had a collaboration here with Browser Sound Festival from Brandon. The beginning, so it was like a series of 6 workshops on JavaScript. It was mostly on the p5.sound library. That's a very popular library for creative coding. And then we had some sort of like intro workshop, which was more for people who didn't have much experience with programming. It was like a live coding workshop. And then the rest was also always really around JavaScript programming from different perspectives. In May last year, we launched an open call. In the end, I think there were 48 applicants and 2 people were chosen by the jury. And they were also coached by them. So that's Marko Ciciliani, Olia, Lialina, and Kris. You will hear them, as I said, at the end of this festival in a panel with Jana. And you will also hear Tansy and Bilawa soon, where they will explain what they did with this opportunity and how their project turned out. So yeah, so I would like to share some information about things I've come across over the past year, some things I've noticed in articles, and I'm definitely not an expert in this in any way. I just wish to open up a bit the conversation, and I thought it would be interesting to just share the things I found. Yeah, first there's some questions that were brought up a few times in conversations or in articles that stuck with me. I would just like to list them up here. First of all, is the question of what exactly is WebSoundArt? So what makes a work of art on the internet or on the web that could be classified as audio sound art? And yeah, it's also always this question of, isn't the web a primarily visual medium? So how do we deal with this as sound artists? And also interesting questions, is web sound art by definition interactive? Could we identify different forms of web sound art? So like, for example, could you say there's like web installations, games, maybe web performances? Yeah, and sound is a time-based medium. So also what are the implications of this for the experience on the web? And what is the role of the listener on the web? And could we distinguish different roles? And also, how do we as sound artists interact with these, or how do we create for our web users? And I think Jana will also address some of these questions later, so stay tuned. So yeah, if I look at the discourse around web art or net art, I would say it's mostly embedded in the media arts and the visual arts, and sound or music as a standalone medium within the web is little discussed, which also like understandable since it's so incorporated with like this other media and or these other art forms, let's say. Which is also a reason why I thought this platform could be of interest, to shed some light on that. And most of the information I found recently was more about on like the earlier years of the net art movement, which like with like specific focus on music. It often focused also on like networks or network music, on like new ways of making music together, and also of course on the heightened accessibility to and distribution of music, and on different listening experience. So these are still topics we also talk about partly today. And I found 2 journals from the Neue Zeitschrift für Musik in Germany, one from 1998 called Netzwerk, and I haven't read through it yet. I only recently got it. But yeah, it mostly talked about these things like, let's get on the web, and so and what could we do with the web? And then there's one 2004. You can see a big difference here already. And interesting here is that they mentioned 2 platforms, the audio hyperspace and sound toys. And I found audio hyperspace not like it's not online anymore, but it's archived on the Internet Archive Wayback Machine. And this was a project from the SWR, which is the radio station of Southwest Germany. And it has some similarities with WebSoundArt. It was very interesting to see. Yeah, and the websites, as I said, is now only accessible through the Internet Archive, but it's a good source of some sound experiments on the internet in the early 2000s. But many works have been lost, or links don't work anymore, but still it's really nice to browse through. And then another platform is Sound Toys from artist Sansa. which he started in 1996. And it's not specifically for WebSoundArt, but it's about audiovisual art. And this was maintained a long time, but then with the discontinuation of Adobe Flash Player, many works now have not been updated and aren't accessible anymore. But also still lots of things to see. And this one's still online. And yeah, and then I noticed maybe like after, I don't know, 2006 or so, I noticed less articles popping up. But yeah, I'm talking from the perspective now of looking back. So of course I wasn't consciously experiencing the art scene at that time. Yeah, and I wonder what it must have been like if composers or musicians also noticed a loss of discussion during the time. Maybe also the internet became more of like a mundane tool or a commonplace, and that could be part of it. I also found this interesting quote, or like it's not a quote, but it's now I'm quoting it, from Ilse Huygens in her article about media art in Flanders. And I have translated it from Dutch to English. It says, the moment the institutional art world started discovering internet art, and major museums like MoMA started buying works by Jodine, among others, or organizing major exhibitions around software and internet art declared itself dead. Is something I think we can talk about, but I thought it was an interesting quote because it points to the wish of net art to exist outside of the established art institutions, or maybe not even the wish, but also like the requirement for net art to exist outside of that. One interesting book also that was published a bit later in 2011 is Netitudes from Josephine Bosma. And the book includes also a chapter on the evolution of music and on the evolution of the listeners on and through the internet. But she does not elaborate on web-based sound art. And then contemporary worlds, we also have the web audio conference, which is it's more like a conference more for the technicalities around web audio. So it's less of an artistic resource, but very important. So this is sort of things I found and I shared, and I will also share a document with you later through the chat with the sources. So, but it would also be nice if maybe you have found other things, if you would like to share them in the chat, or also you can share them on the Discord later. Yeah, and one last thing I would also shortly mention is the preservation of web art, because I've noticed lots of things I wanted to look at that were talked about 20 years ago. I couldn't find anymore because it's, internet art is just quickly lost. And I also find this transience actually quite beautiful in a way, or let's say at least intriguing. I find it an intriguing aspect of the medium. But also preservation and documentation of media art is very important. And then, of course, I have to mention also Rhizome and their net art anthology. They are doing very important work when it comes to the conservation of net art. And yeah, and then, of course, we have the Wayback Machine on the Internet Archive. It's also a very helpful tool if you haven't found that out yet. So a short talk about the future of WebSoundArt. It was the goal to start something, and most of all also to centralize some things and to let people come together and talk about this. And in doing so, the project has been quite compact and intense over like just a year. It's also because of the grant application I did and the way I could imagine findings in the project. And the resources will, of course, stay online, but there are, for now, no further workshops planned. There is no new open call. It would be, of course, lovely to continue this in the future. And I do not see this as an endpoint for WebSoundArt. I hope it's like a starting point for further research. And yeah, one thing I will personally also would like to maintain in the future is a collection. a collection on the website. So here I provide a space for artists to exhibit their WebSound artworks, also with a way to centralize some works. For now, it has just 4 works. So if you have a web-based work you would like to add, you can always contact me. Yeah, and then a major goal of WebSoundArt was to bring together a community around WebSoundArt, and I have set up a Discord channel for that. And throughout the year, we also met there a few times. But I would also like to hear from you if you think it's a valuable channel, or if you think there's other channels or platforms you find more appropriate. And also, if you want to get anything out of it, what would that be? So yeah, we can talk about it afterwards. Also, feel free to just write something in the chat if you don't want to talk or can't talk. And then before I end, also a small but important shout out to Desiree Cabis, who has beautifully designed the website and has taken care of the social media. And they were an amazing support for me the last year in this project. So thank you. Okay,
thank you.
Yeah, so if there's any questions, feel free to ask.
I would just like to congratulate you on doing this. I think it's really a fantastic initiative, and I really think that you provided some very important impulses for the whole community who's interested in that. Really great job. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
Also, I want to ask shortly,
Yeah.
is the past workshop is also recorded? Because I think I missed several of them and would be interested to check if it's recorded and accessible at all. Just wondering.
Yeah, it's a good. Unfortunately, they were not recorded. They were not meant to be
Okay.
published later again. But, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Olia is having problems. Let us know if you can hear us. Yeah, I guess you cannot.
Yeah, I also wanted to say that everything was like extremely well organized, like like everything was like really smooth, like very yeah, professionally done. Like also the communication, like the Instagram page, everything like I was really like positively surprised about that.
It's very nice to hear. Okay, then we will continue. There's no more questions. Bilawa, you can continue with your presentation if you want.
Yes, then I will share my screen. One, so share. So I hope it's visible now, the presentation. No? Yeah, so yeah, thank you, Eveline, for choosing me for one of the open call applicants, and made it me able to not only learn from the mentor. So I also would like to thank Marko, Kris, and Olia for their guidance and many discussions that we have, especially Kris, who very passionately also tried to hack the framework that I use. I really appreciate it. And the work tirai, it means curtain from an Indonesian language, is online at this address. So tirai.sastrasuara.me, and yeah, one can access it and try it around. I will tell a bit about the work. So it's basically it's a visual novel. So I imagine it to be a visual novel telling stories from the time of Japanese occupation in Indonesia, which was between 1942 and 1945, telling stories from the point of view of three characters. And the form, I imagine, is mimicking. So it's not really a visual novel, but mimicking a visual novel, which means the users read the story and can select the story path. And the sound element, because it's conceptualized as a web sound art, the sound follow the idea is, so the sound is generated by user interaction as they click and read the story, and the type of sound that is being heard is also informed by on which story path that the readers are on. A bit of the context of the story. So Indonesia before was under Dutch colonial rule. Somewhere there's a lot of arguments about when does it really start, but I would say one of the consensus is to say end of 19th century, beginning 20th century, until the coming of the Japanese at the Dutch East Indies, the former name of Indonesia, in 1942. And then one of the consequences of this, that there are many internment camps that that is used to put European, especially by the Japanese armies. And at the same time, of course, the reason that the Japanese took over the regions of Indonesia was because they are interested to accumulate natural resources, especially from the area of Borneo and Sumatra, I think, and also some using the man labor that they can achieve by conquering Indonesia. So as soon as Japan recapitulated in 1945, this opportunity is seized. So Indonesia proclaimed its independence both from the Dutch rule and the Japanese occupation. The stories follows three characters, which is inspired by true personalities, with some freedom to make the stories. The first is an Indonesian poet, philosopher, who tries to conceptualize some ideas about what is Indonesian culture and how to develop the Indonesian language, because there were no such things at that time, that Indonesia was actually consists of multiple of ethnicities, multiple cultures, not singular language. So it was a very new thing to think about. Another story comes from a young Dutch woman who sing in a voice orchestra inside the internment camp as a way to survive the difficulties and the challenge of living as a captive in a very bad and harsh environment. And the last stories follow about a Japanese student who then drafted as a pilot, and he contemplates on his last night alive because the next day he is assigned to get into a kamikaze airplane and must sacrifice his life for the country. And why this story is interesting for me, because this project actually started 2 years ago with some colleagues. One is a Japanese, one is a Dutch person. And we, at the time, for the context of that project, we discussed a lot about what is our shared history, and among which we found that in one point in history, actually, it might be that the three of us meet in a very different context during this Second World War, where we might be on opposing sides, we might be hostile to each other, or in a very different way, very aggressive, or must be very different than how we met at the time. So the idea is to have this shared history discussed and sharing multiple perspectives on this historical event. And of course, coming with this, there's always sentiments and stereotypes from each of us, not each of us, but like the Japanese during the Second World War is always viewed as fanatics, ready to die, and harsh, for example. And there are some, according to this Dutch friend, there are some sentiments to Japanese person because they are viewed as the enemy. So if you have relation with a Japanese person, you can have this kind of persecutions. And also the same Indonesian tend to have like a not so good view about Dutch because they felt that okay, they used to exploit Indonesia, etc., etc. So it is interesting to see other side of the stories, not to relativize the pain or the sufferings that is experienced from each, but rather to see from a bigger pictures that in such a situation, there always we always be on the losing side anyway because of the suffering that comes with war. And I was interested also to have a view on a small narrative within a big narrative. That means within the big story of Second World War, the Indonesian independence, and the rise of Japanese occupations in Indonesia, there are small stories that one can explore that takes place within this narrative structures. Because it's a visual novel or conceived as a visual novel, the development requires elements of text, sound, image, and video. And this is where there are some limitations on how I approach the project, because not everything is made using technology or generated on the web. For example, the text, the idea is to have many small note or atom of stories on which one can follow from one to the next by making a choice. And here is one illustration from, I used twine to visualize this. So one can see the arrows showing from one story what possible next story that it will come or it can be read. And the inspirations of the text come from first the Indonesian author Sultan Takdir Ali Shabana, who experienced the period, and the Woman Voice Orchestra of Sumatra. So the women who were interned in the camp in Sumatra, and collections of student pilot diaries collected by Onuki Tierney in the book Kamikaze Diaries. And to create the visual part, the idea is to make a collage, because here then I can make identity of each of these characters a bit blurry, so one cannot really see if this belonging to one or belonging to the other. And this image and video collage made with processing in Python, and I try to mimic patterns, geometric patterns in the batik cloth, in the Wagara patterns, or in a Dutch quilt. So it's always how to arrange images, geometric images in a form. The video and the image always has a relation to the period. For example, collections of Japanese propaganda film who were then used at that time to make the Indonesian people support the war cause of the Japan, or some film made by the Dutch East Indies to promote or to show that okay, this is how big is the area of which is conquered by the Netherlands, etc., etc. Also some ink drawings and shadow figures, because I also try to make the story structures following the traditional shadow puppet theater. So I would like to have this idea of curtains. So it's basically a paper cut shape, which is then recorded live. the sound, basically collections of collage and cluster, especially using some popular music from the period. Noteworthy is the Kronchong genre, because it's a mixture of a Western, I would say it's a Western-based popular music, so using Western instrument, but the way that the music is played is absorbing elements from classical or traditional some of Indonesian culture, so like the Javanese gamelan or some Sudanese elements as well. So for me, it's interesting because it combines both of the words, so to say, and it was very popular at the time, played also in the radio. And some melodic materials are made from voice analysis of two figures. So Ali Shabana, the Indonesian author, and a person called Sister Katarina, who are like a nun who experienced living in the camp and singing in this voice orchestra in Palembang. And also, I borrow some ideas from gamelan music with which I'm more familiar. For example, the music or the melodic materials utilize the padlock tuning system of the gamelan instruments Linduraras, which is located in the House of Indonesian Cultures here in Berlin, which I measured last year for another project. And some ideas about garap, or I translate easily here simply as orchestration, which means based on what kind of rasa or impression that the scene or the text require, the combinations of sound is changed, and it's informed by the locations of the story or the choice of the readers. And also the usage of short musical patterns or tengkok as a building block. So in which then different sound combinations leads to different sound impression. And all of this is then tied together with a visual novel engine. So there's an engine which is based on JavaScript. So it's a game engine called Monogatari. And it combines everything. So there's the text that one can read, the visual element, the playing of the sound. However, there's some limitations, of course, because this is a platform that is specifically tailored to certain needs. And therefore, it requires a lot of tweaking of the default. And in the end, one needs also to use extra libraries or outside of the visual engine. So we use Ton.js in the end to make this mixings of different sounds a bit easier. So, of course, I would like to share also the challenge that I use to face in this project. At first, of course, because it's the first time I completely work using JavaScript and testing for the web, etc. It makes the development time takes longer because I play around with various libraries, try to understand it and develop it. And I think Eveline also mentioned that last year there was another festival, the Browser Sound Festival, and it was my first time as well learning about the P5 sound. So I learned from the tutorial given by Brandon also last year, and it becomes the basis of the current work. And of course, working with the complete engine is it's good in itself because it already have anything included. However, it already accommodates a specific use case. So I think sometimes I wonder if it would be just easier if I just build something from the bottom up. And also the questions about real-time generations of sound materials, visual materials versus pre-made materials using external programs, because then one consequence of this is that we will have limited types of interactivity. That means it would be, at least for me, it would be really interesting if the generations of the materials is somehow very closely tied or related to the actions of the users, or whatever happens on the browser by the user. But in this case, because everything is made outside of the web environment, they are saved as a data. So either MP4 data or MP3 data, and of course then it limits if I want to have non-deterministic kind of materials. So this is the limitations that I face. And just to show probably a quick demo. So this is how it looks. So I checked also one of the challenges that I face is that I just realized that developing for the web is practically also testing different possibilities where it's being shown. And to test, I'll try to preempt, okay, what is the browser's behave like this? And from which device that the users will experience the work. And I think this should be a better plan if I would make next work using this platform. So I think this time the sound comes out, I hope. Okay, yeah. So the clicking or the interactions with this page, so to say, creates new text being shown, and based on a certain rules, it will make a specific kind of sound. And therefore, I imagine that the users will read the stories and click on their own tempo. And based on that, a sound will be generated. So one can go as far as one wants, or go as slow as one wants. And it gives, I think, a different kind of, again, this idea of aggregates or clusters, for example. And then a choice will be shown to the users, and the users can choose where to continue the stories. And it goes on, and I will not play the whole thing. But if one goes through the stories, then the sound will change. It can, as soon as one gets into a later stage of the story, so to say, the music becomes more dense and more visual materials like video being shown, and the variety is also changed. So this is the idea of the work. And so I think I need also to mention contributions of the mentors, because I think in the face of those challenges I mentioned, I think, because I must admit that I have very little knowledge in this particular area. So it was really helpful to have all of this reference of other works or use case being shared with me, and also this help in technical and statistical problem solving, because I think what I experienced throughout the process is that one thing to solve the technical problems, but then the solving of the technical problems is only like to serve a specific aesthetics goal, and sometimes it becomes intertwined so closely that when the solving an aesthetic problems become also solving a technical problems. And I think in one point in the work, I really need to think both together, because then choosing one aesthetic solution is, of course, like choosing a specific technical solution. And of course, there's input of aesthetic considerations through discussions and dialectic process, which is for me a very natural. So I thank again to Kris, Marko, and Olia for this. Yeah, so I think that's it for the introductions of the work. I think we still have time, probably. If you have questions or suggestions, I will be happy to discuss. Thank you. Yeah, Marko.
What's the sort of playing time to get through the entire story?
So
Does it,
yeah.
and does it differ, are there like big variations in the duration when you replay it?
That's something that I don't really measure in a strict way. But if one sit around it and took it very easy to read, I think it can get to 20, 30 minutes. Again, depends on how you enjoy reading it. And for example, one colleague with whom I share this work, this person really listened to the sound first. So I think it's also interesting to observe how one behaves when there's a sound, because sometimes they really just wait for the sound before continuing to read. So as if as if there's something more about to know about the user's behavior as well. But if one go truly through the choice very quick and know already the path that leads to the ending, because there is an ending, I think it can also be 10, 15 minutes. So again, the variety of the path is not that big, actually. And it's purposely done so given the scope and the scope of the project, the current project. But it's still, I think if you, for the first time, trying to play through it, I think it's not that easy as well to get into the ending. But after some repetition, you know which question leads to which answers, to which path, then you will get to hang of it. Okay, this is the optimized way to get into the end.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. I sat through the piece.
Yeah.
And it took me around, I mean, I also sometimes just stopped and really listened to the music.
Yes.
Enjoying that. It took me around 20, 30 minutes indeed.
Yes.
But so you're saying is it like only one particular way of going to the end? Or is it just after having seen so many stories, you will anyway get there?
Okay, so there are two ways of get into the end. So you can get into the end by following the path of the two characters, because basically it's also like limited by the amount of time I can work on this project. So the third characters doesn't lead to the end, and it's just shown as an intermezzo. So if you follow each of these two characters, you will eventually get into the end, and then the work can be repeated by choosing, okay, from which characters you will start again. And the idea is to have this balance between familiarity, because then you will be familiar with the story after playing several times, but also to introduce some randomness. So it's still to a certain extent deterministic. So after several times, I think you will be finishing it in probably 5 minutes if you just click, 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 click. Yeah, Kris.
And yeah, well done, by the way. With all your experience you have now in coding, because previously, had you been coding before, or was it the first time?
I've been coding, but in a different context, I would say. It's not for this kind of coding.
Did you feel now after this project that you're have more confident, or is it like, was it worth learning all this for trying to bring the story, or was it like getting in the way of your visual storytelling, learning all the code? Or do
I
you feel
think
it's helpful for
I think it really opens up possibility, because this is I think it's easier to learn how to code and to build it, and it's worth of the investment in time, because then it gets easier to realize what I have in mind about the work. For example, this work already, like, I would say very close to what I imagine, but I can also imagine if I can code something from the bottom up, then it gets even more closer. So I think I would say it's worth it, and I can already imagine what kind of for the next iteration, so to say, what kind of improvement that one can make, especially playing around with Ton.js and and see really push the possibility of generating materials there, or even incorporate I don't know, P5, for example, the P5.js in the platform. So you would have, instead of pre-made materials, really generated materials on the web.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Good progress.
Thank you.
Okay, I think, thank you, Bilawa. If there's no more questions.
Okay, thank you.
We can give the stage to Tansy.
Hi. I would also love to thank all the organizers and mentors who gave me tremendous support during the project. So my project is called Here's the Information We Collect, and it's a speech recognition piece. I'm using the not Tone.js, but Anion.js. It's basically the same as the P5 sound, in that it has like but it has a speech recognition portion to it. And should I show the piece first, or should I explain a little bit about the concept? I guess.
Showing.
Okay. All right. Share screen, and I should remember to share sound. Can everyone see? So this project is tailored to respond to the privacy policy of a specific tech company, but all the privacy policies probably use very similar templates and hire similar lawyers to draft them. So I think this is in a way quite universal. So as one reads through the privacy policy, certain keywords are going to trigger a virtual choir to sing or scream, whatever you define it with. I want to share, actually, let me share the project first. So when you get to the website, the link, the URL is here's the information we collect.com. And once you get there, if you click the space bar, can you still see? Close. Yeah, first you close the pop window. And then I don't have an example. I'll just read a few keywords like information, collect, migration, legal, law enforcement, no. So if you don't know the keyword, you can just say help. Help. Okay, this one. Let me try this first. Cast. Help. So it shows you all the trigger words if you forgot what they are. But the use case would actually be someone reads through the entire privacy policy. And if you pay attention to the keywords, some of them are quite concerning, like there's legal, search warrant, that's surprising and not surprising at the same time. So there's a real incident in the United States, in some states, can we actually? Okay, I can't really talk with this on, but so abortion is still not legal in many states, and there's a real incident where a mother and a daughter were talking about abortion on Facebook, And the police actually used their chat history as an evidence to arrest them because it wasn't legal in that state. So, but actually as users, we sign away our rights when we register an account on those platforms. And we go through those privacy policies so quickly that we don't actually read it. So this project kind of forces people to actually look at them and emphasize the potential danger that it might cause and this power dynamic between a huge tech corporation and individual users who have basically no power over anything. If you want to use their platform, which most of us do for different like study or business reasons, that we can't just like completely live without social media, especially as artists. But this is kind of emphasizing the cost of that. And close. Cast. Oh, so that's a cast. And actually, let me go to something else. Close. It doesn't close now. I want to go to the graphic score that I created for the singers. So the singers are all like professional opera singers. And this is a score that I initially gave them. I also taught a class on graphic notation. I wasn't trained musically at all. I don't play any instrument, so I sort of play humans. Right, human was a keyword, that's why. You. Partners. Network. Safety. Personalized. Yeah, so in a way, this project also deconstructs the language itself. In this case, particularly the English language. And sometimes it just stretches the word, the syllable. And sometimes it responds to, let me close this, close. It doesn't close, I'll just refresh. But in certain cases, like this particular one, communication, actually the singer is not saying that word, but saying manipulation, because like media communication to the users is technically manipulation instead of like an equal communication. And this is a script. This is the actual privacy policy. And here are different keywords that marked in yellow are the most common words. Guess it takes a one. Close. Like the more common words, I made them very short, like products. Like very short, and it's randomized between like 3 different versions of it. So each mouse would have 3 versions. So together they have more varieties that can be triggered. And for the longer ones, I marked them in pink, like unlawful. So it's longer. So it's like a live composition decided by the user. And some of them are spoken words, like others. Yeah, it's sort of like that. And I have a a few Easter eggs hidden in there as well. For example, if this was shown in a gallery context, like it would be like full screen on a large monitor or projection. And if someone walks by and say the word, they're doing some sort of unpaid internship. And
please enjoy the exploitation of art workers' labor as part of the exhibition.
And this will be triggered. And if this was ever shown at a museum, I will only tell the lowest paying staff at that institution about this trick so that they can. No. Okay, I'm not gonna trigger this again. So another one that I put in there was this piece can be used as an instrument for a real-time performance. So after the performance, if you say thank you, and
now applaud.
Yeah, it's gonna say that. So yeah, this is in a way interactive, and I hope it's educational for some people. And yeah, any questions? Thank you. I'll put the link. Oh, someone already did. Thanks, Jana.
I have a question, if I may, and if I'm audible at all. Yeah.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, very nice. I couldn't. I missed it. What is this? Your Easter egg for the interns at the exhibition? What this great message that would come? By what word would it be triggered?
Let me type it in the chat. It's either, if I still remember it correctly, it's either hourly wage or unpaid.
Okay. And this you share with people who work at there?
Only the lowest paying people.
Okay,
the security guards, the unpaid interns. So kind of, I really want to like hack the power structure of the art world.
Okay. Would there be some words like this for the web users?
I don't think these are mentioned anywhere because they're not part of the composition. So this is really only there for like public viewing sessions and exhibitions. And for the web users, if they say help, there's going to be that keywords window pop up, then they can read through the keywords.
Okay. Yeah, very nice. Thank you.
Okay.
But if I may continue to ask, did you, what is, when you show this work in the real space, is it a one screen?
So the original version of this piece was actually Max MSP, but it's very computationally costly. It requires a very high power computer with a very good GPU. Otherwise, things might stutter. And it was a 3-channel version with 3 screens. So like in reality, it would be like an immersive gallery with like 3 walls like that, very big. So I think doing this version really helps me like make it portable so that it can tour easily at different places where the computers might not be the most high-end computers, and more people can experience it in different ways.
Yeah, by the way, maybe it's a question for both of you. In fact, I didn't check it myself if your works do work on mobile phones, on mobile browsers. Yep, the same way.
It's just a smaller screen. It also screams.
Bilawa, is yours working on the
Yes,
mobile?
actually, I think I tested mostly on on the mobile phone, because I think this is what most users would do. But I just realized if I use Safari browser, then the typography is a bit a mess.
Safari is not a browser.
Agree.
Well, yeah. Can I just then continue to ask Tansy? Yeah, very great works. I really enjoy
Yours
it.
too. Thank you.
I want to ask a bit. I'm really intrigued. So basically, the voice recognition is used to trigger the voice, so to say. Is there a other relationship between the what is being recognized and the sound being generated, because it is recorded, if I understand correctly. The
Yes.
recorded sound. Okay, so there is no sound analysis that inform what kind of sound will be sung by the singers, so to say.
Not on the web version.
Okay.
There are other like AI audio generation tools that I haven't figured how do you use on the web version. So this one is just a simple recording. And in the future,
Okay.
I hope I can incorporate Tone.js and other things in there.
Okay. And I'm just out of curiosity because, for example, is how you make decisions about what text is being sung? Because, for example, there's the trigger word is other, and then the text is the. So is there like connections between the choice of the text being sung by the singers and the trigger word?
I think the score is mostly it has nothing to do with actual words, although there are some that are words, but mostly it's about the sonic components of a word. So I sort of just took it apart and select certain parts, and mostly for the sound. And some of them have additional meanings, like the manipulation one, but most of them are just a vocal piece.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I'll check it out and then experience it directly.
Okay, I think there are no more questions. Then thank you, Tansy, for your presentation.
Thank you.
For your really nice work. And we'll have now like a 5-minute break before the panel starts, so everyone can have a short drink or something. Okay, I think everyone's back, more or less. So we could start with the panel. Jana.
Hello. Yeah, so also hello and good evening from my side. I'm Jana. I will be moderating the panel tonight. For some people maybe know, I've also been writing some articles, like more specifically some interviews for the WebSoundArt blog. Eveline also mentioned it before. And next week, actually, we will publish interviews with Tansy and Bilawa about their works. So you can already look forward to that as well. But so yeah, first, we have here our 3 experienced artists and coaches, and yeah, like I've thought of some things that at least I'm curious about to hear their opinion. We're gonna talk about this, but of course you're free to also ask questions in the chat. I'll see in which ways I can incorporate them, and like we'll also have a Q&A in the end for those that want to share their ideas and their questions. Okay. So let's first maybe look at the 3 people, and I want to ask all 3 of you to shortly present yourself and maybe what your relationship is with work on the art, and so that we have a little bit of an idea who we have in the room. So I put you all like in just randomly in an order, but so my first person is Marko. So Marko, who are you?
Hello, everybody. My name is Marko Ciciliani. I'm a composer, but I've been working with different media already for a long time. So I usually refer to myself as a composer and intermedia artist. That said, usually my point of departure when I also do inter-transmedia projects, the point of departure is usually still mainly a musical one. And maybe just a few words about my experience with internet-based art. It was also actually kicked off through the Corona crisis. And in 2020, I was artistic director of a festival and a workshop which took place in Antwerp. And so we were also faced with this problem that we couldn't let it take place live as we usually did it. And instead, we chose for the platform Mozilla Hubs to create projects, exhibitions, but also performances. And what really impressed me was that I was surprised how alive it felt. So when we were gathering in these rooms and interacting, it really gave me this very strong sense of liveness, much more than I would have expected. And that's also when I started, after this project, it sort of triggered an interest in me to further explore the web as an with its artistic possibilities. I ended up doing a number of projects, web-based projects, which was not always easy, also not always satisfactory. So it's a bumpy road still, I would say, but yeah, at least there are also a couple of things that I think worked very well. So that's my experience with it.
Great, thank you very much. Next person is Olia. How about you?
Hi. Yeah, it's a real pleasure to be here and also to be a part of the, not only of the festival, but of this platform. I am myself, I'm a net artist, and since Eveline started to talk about the difference in between net art and web art, I would say that when in 1996 somebody would have said to call me web artist, I would just become furious. Yeah, I would say, no, I'm not a web artist, I'm a net artist. How could you? And how dare you? Yeah, call me like this. But then because yeah, I'm net artist for a very, very long time and already. And I started at a certain moment, I started also to deal a lot with the history of the web itself and preserve it and actually do everything that web continues to exist in our minds. So at a certain moment, I realized that, in fact, I want to be seen as a web artist. Just really that this word is present, that we talk about web art, web music, that it's not vanishing. Yeah. So this, of course, web is my main. It's my my environment, and music is not so much, though my son and my husband are musicians, but at the same time the audio as a format for the web is also a big part of what I'm dealing today when preserving the early web, because audio was always a very difficult issue. Like it in 95, in 2000, in 2005, and so on. Maybe we can talk about it later.
Okay, great. And then last but not least, Kris.
Hi, my name is Kris Meeusen. I'm from Antwerp. So I'm not a net artist or a web artist. I always have been interested in web and have been doing experiments on web, and then especially during the Flash era. Then after that, I continued more doing interactive installations, more physical work, which I really enjoy. So I'm also very technical. I'm a creative coder, so that's also a bit my role in the coaching team. Besides that, I'm also a teacher doing interactive design. So that's really my interest in interacting with technology, with people. And I have no background in sound. So.
But I was telling this before we all met here to the coaches. I think that Eveline made like a really interesting combination of people with their own strengths. So I think it's, whether you work with sound or not, I think it's awesome that all three of you are here, because like actually that brings me already to the next question. So I was wondering, like, for each of you then, what is WebSoundArt, and maybe also from the points that you come from, what is then maybe the difference, for example, between WebSoundArt and net art or web art, between sound art and WebSoundArt? For example, Marko, I also saw that you do so many things, but on your website you have like a category also with sound art. So like, do you see a difference there? Exactly, and also for Kris, like the differences with your interactive installations, like do you also incorporate them on the web or not? Yeah, and so maybe let's like Olia, maybe you can start. How is it for you?
Yeah, with pleasure. How is it for me? If I can, if I'm allowed to think now about 95, this period between 95, 97, that maybe doesn't say a lot to others here. So it was that people who started to make their web pages or their, let's say, their art projects also, there was not a big, you wouldn't make a big difference, yeah, at that moment in 95. Is it my personal homepage, or is it my personal, or is it my artwork that I publish online? So at this moment, it was there was a possibility to make something with the sound, and like there was as well, but at this moment as well as something that, or it's also possible to make something with images. So it's not only text, yeah, it's possible to have images, it's possible to have animated images, yeah, and it's possible to have sound. And so there was an excitement. It was always seen as also the next big thing. Yeah, that now it's only something small, like a very primitive small file that I can use as a sound. Also in the background of my page, but very soon, like in some weeks, we all will have like very loud websites. This was an idea in 95. Yeah, so it was always big excitement, but at the same time, already from the beginning of 1997, there was a huge resistance from the commercial world to the sound on the web. The idea was that sites should be, there should not be websites with sound. They can be there, but the sound can't start automatically. Yeah, so the reason was always that, no, not the reason, but the explanation was always that we don't know what user wants to hear, and we consider that the web is visual, and the person who came to your website is listening to something else at this moment, and it's a big crime to interrupt what person is listening to right now with the MIDI files in the background of your website. Yeah, it's of course from this point of view, it's of course very understandable. But just I want to say that so people were discouraged to use sound on the web. Fortunately, not everybody was listening to what usability gurus were saying or what commercial world is saying. And from the very beginning till MIDI was disabled by browsers, was not allowed by browsers anymore, there was developing culture of MIDI makers, so people who would produce sounds that would sound good on the websites, that would sound good for the background of the websites. There was also the web composers for the websites. There were people who were collecting all this and publishing it again. It is a culture that's very difficult to access right now because you need an add-ons for the browser. And also because all of these sites don't exist anymore. Yeah, so in my archive, I have quite a collection of the web sounds, of MIDI sounds mostly, and I can hear them because I downloaded an add-on for Firefox. So for me, the web is still quite audible. Yeah, so I will stop at this here. Later I can tell more.
And so, like, do you think, just one further question there, like in those early years where maybe sound, there was like this whole tension with whether or not you could use sound, were there people that were already creating something that we would now maybe consider in this context web sound art?
It was not called WebSoundArt, but it was called homepage music.
Okay, so
Yeah.
okay. Okay, and yeah, Marko, from your point of view, what is for you like where is the difference maybe between, for example, composition, sound art, web sound art? Do you see that there are like some clear differences there, or what is your opinion?
This is a difficult topic, I find. For me, I see it more as a sort of continuous field. And it's correct that on my website I have a special category for sound art. In fact, I was reluctant to make this difference between composition and sound art for a long time, but I sort of gave up. When it comes to net art or web art, it's also something that I didn't distinguish for myself. Like I would associate with net art also things that happened before the internet, or definitely without the World Wide Web, like the League of Automatic Composers when they started connecting their self-programmed little computers, little motherboards, and exchange data and make music with that. That's something that I associate with net art. For the rest, I don't make this difference so much for me. What I found very interesting about entering this field was simply the accessibility. That so I also really sympathize with this notion that art on the web should sort of celebrate this sort of independence from galleries and venues, etc. And for the rest, for me, it was something that I approached quite pragmatically. So I was programming already a lot in platforms like Open Frameworks, or for other projects, I also used a lot Unity. And so I just found it very interesting to be able to produce these things on a platform which is just available for everybody.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, and Kris, for you, you've already said it, like you're mainly working with visuals. I also saw like, but I know I did see that with everything you shared on, at least on your Instagram, your website is silent, but there is sound that you're using from other artists. But like, how is it from your perspective, this use of audio in the web and with things that are happening there?
Yeah, I'm very visual person, so for me, it comes second, like the sound. It's important, but it's not like the main focus. Sorry for the sound people here. Yeah, so I don't have many opinions on that. I think besides the things that had already been said. Or
Yeah, and
I just
like
see it from a technical standpoint point of view. That's like much more interesting to work with sound on the web now than it was like after they killed Flash. There was almost like nothing to experiment with sound on the web, and now with the web sound API, it's super.
mm,
I didn't use it much, but I see what you can do with it. Like connect all the nodes. It's very well built, so I see like a lot of opportunity now, which there technically weren't like 5 or 10 years ago.
yeah. Yeah, I think you also saw quite a lot of things, I guess, from the proposals that people send in for the call we had here, right? Is there like, are there like some directions people are using the sound in the web, for example, or like some tendencies that you noticed there?
Yeah, it's a bit related to another question of like some kind of formats or which are very popular now in the proposals. Like a lot of people want to like collaborate with sound, like collaborate on the web and do something together with sound. But I think from the polls we received, they were not strong enough. It's like a great idea to do something strong together with sound. Then it should be like very. It's difficult to make it like well, I think. But what was the question again?
No, I was wondering, like, if you looked at those proposals, like, for example, I think we had two great projects that also show, like, from Bilawa and Tansy, like the different things that are possible, like more of the visual story book, and Tansy with the AI and speech recognition. So, like, in general, with the proposals, did you see those are like two ways of going? Were there more people going in those directions? Were there other directions that we didn't see yet?
Yeah, there were some very, very experimental ones, and then most of them were like the collaborative thing, like doing something together, like mashing sounds together or build something together. And then you had the visual storytellings. These were for me like the main directions of people were taking.
Yeah. And what I was wondering is like, were they all interactive in some way?
Yeah, some were, yeah.
Yeah. Like this is also, I don't know who of you would like to answer this, but so like for me in the interviews I've been doing for the series, I've been asking people what for them are, for example, characteristics of WebSoundArt. And I guess that, for example, maybe because of necessity, you need at least to click once to start the audio. So somehow, I guess you can already start saying like, okay, it is in some way interactive. Like, of course, where is the definition of being interactive? And I don't know if one of you would like to answer. I hope so. Like, what are for you like characteristics of WebSoundArt? Like some parts of it.
Can I say something to just directly to what you remarked that this to my remark to the remark that you at least have to click once it would be that in fact we today always have to click at least once to start sound on the web. The sound is not starting. Yeah, it is one of the since several years it is supposed to be the scene. And it's just not allowed. Browsers are not playing it. You have to you have to say that you allow it. So this one click. It's always, sorry, I want to say that sound is always interactive right now. Yeah. No, but it was in another way that there were proposals, very interesting proposals, and one of the actually winners now is exactly this, that the sound itself would depend on the input of the user. Yeah, so, and this is what we also see in Tansy's work, for example. Yeah. So in this way, interactivity is important. By the way, I just looked in my browser. I have something here that would work. So if I can share my screen also with the sound, I can show to you what is meant with the very early website with the sound in the background, if you want to see it.
Yes, please, I would be lovely.
Is it? But am I allowed to share here?
So I normally yes. Work.
Yeah. I will just select. What do I select? Entire screen? Not. We are now here. So if I now look here, do you see my screen? Do you see the skull?
Yes.
Yeah. And would you hear it if I play now? Could you hear sound?
Yes.
Okay. Oops. No, I'm not. Well, sorry, I can't. I'm not now logged in, and I could only show this page.
Okay, great. Then, unless we all want to keep watching, yeah, whoever's speaking, Vic, could you stop share then? Because we're just seeing the Zoom meeting, which is
Sorry,
almost,
where is it?
art by
Yes.
itself, I guess.
So I'm very. Am I not sharing right now?
No, now it's fine. Now it's fine. We are back into our little Zoom room. Great. Yeah, so yeah, we were talking about like the clicks and the audio. One thing that I think then is like maybe at some point if the websites start to continue having so much visual information and colors, they should also make a policy that you click if you are okay with getting all this visual information. But I guess the lobby of the visual people is bigger than the audio one. I don't know. But anyway, we were yeah talking about like those aspects of WebSoundArt, and so the one that I keep falling over is this interactivity. And I was wondering, like, if this is true, if I make the statement that this interactivity is like an inescapable part of WebSoundArt. And like Marko, what do you think about this? Like,
Well, I mean, I would say that probably it is. Of course, I can think of many things that could be provided on a website without interactivity. But then, for example, if it was something visual, it wouldn't be different than just watching a video play. And if it was audio, it wouldn't be different than just listening to a sound file being played. So in fact, I do think that the interactivity is what makes it interesting. In my experience, I've done a couple of experiments because I was really interested in this quality of interactivity that you can experience on the web. And so I deliberately also did some kind of very minimal things. I don't believe that the interactivity has to be somehow spectacular, big gestures or anything, but that also, I personally, for example, found it interesting. Like there was one project I made where I tried to replicate something like a haptic experience through interactivity, which of course is a paradoxality, you could say, because the only thing that we can interact with, like in this case, it was a mouse, but I tried to design a sort of a stuttering mouse icon, which would then also produce stuttering sounds when you sort of scratch over different surfaces. And I just wanted to experiment with it, how if this is somehow translating into something similar like a haptic experience, which you could say, of course, doesn't work, but there were some interesting things that I found quite remarkable about it. So I did find this extremely entertaining to explore this. And even though these were very minimal gestures, it did create this sense of connection with what was going on this page. And this question, how can you create this sense of connection, is something that I find interesting? How can you try to really transport the user into this window that you're building in front of them? And yeah, I do think that interactivity is a key in a way. But of course, there's many different ways how to interact. You can just kind of fly through spaces, like through computer games as something interactive. But yeah, I was especially interested in how you can maybe find unusual ways to approach this, which create a certain bond with the scene in front of you. And as a consequence also of the sounds that are then triggered by these interactions.
I think that's actually also a very nice example you give. Like, I don't know, for me, when I think of WebSoundArt, I think of a user basically going on a website and trying out a project. But of course, there are some people that also have projects that are, for example, going on stage. That like maybe you don't have the one-on-one thing, or like maybe a whole audience in connection to like whatever is happening on the screen, and then maybe a performer interacting with it. And it's also a thing I've been thinking about a lot, is this question how web sound art can be presented. Like we now have it maybe, yeah, on the web, and maybe in like concerts, but I don't know, like for the three of you with your experience, like is there like other ways that you know or that you can imagine how web sound art can be shown? Like, for example, in a museum context, I know Nicola Lutz, she gave this awesome idea when I interviewed her about kind of having a web sound art dome, which was based on the Casa de Sonoro, I think in Argentina it was, that this would be like basically a building that was like having all this web sound art project. I don't know, like, how do you see it? Because we spoke a bit about archiving. I would love to also pick up on that, but how would it be like for the now, for presenting what is here in this update of the web?
Maybe I can say, because I would have, you would not like to hear what I say. I think, because I always think that it is a web, it should be on the web. It's the primary thing. So you don't think about how it is in the real space. Yeah. So this is what would make it really web art or web sound art. So for me, this web part would be very important. Preservation is another thing. It's also the question for what you preserve it. Yeah. Also for being able to still access it and admire it on the web, or just in general, wherever.
Yeah. So basically, for example, Tansy's piece has a double life. On the web, it's a web sound art piece, but if she's doing it in a gallery, it's something else.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, and someone else? Like, I don't know, Kris, you've been working a lot also with things in museum contexts, right?
Yeah, and previously I never used web for professional work because it's too slow. The resolutions are so big that it's yeah. I use a lot of open frameworks and Cinder and like very high performance frameworks. But now actually currently I'm doing multiple web projects now. Not because it's on the web, just because it's like very easy to do things on the web now. It's very platform independent, it's fast. So I think yeah, it's very interesting. Even though I don't need it to be on the web, it can be from web and it can go also like physically. And it wasn't the case like 10 years ago. So I think it's an interesting evolution, technically, yeah.
Yeah. And like, do you think in the near future that the web is gonna be so strong that those things will work, or do we still have to wait a bit for this?
No, it's a now you have a WebAssembly, so like it's like C++ code which can run in the browser, so it's like super fast, and all these things were like previously unthinkable, or like 100 or 1,000 times slower. And then people would like say, yeah, I'm not going to do it on the web because you will hit some wall somewhere. So yeah, all these things are very interesting for the future.
Yeah, yeah. And I got a question.
If I can add something to it, Jana, if you don't mind, if I can add something to it, the web is very strong as a framework and as a technology. The thing is that it's getting weaker as a medium. So in fact, a lot of things that are made not for online, they are made using the web technologies. So many things that we don't think that they are web projects, they are in fact web projects. Yeah, so there's the question, but it's very important to, and that's why I so much like the initiative of WebSoundArt, that it sort of brings people to acknowledge the web, that you're inside the browser and your computer is connected, and you can be also active as a listener or as a user. So things like this.
Thank you. Yeah, with Marko, we had actually a really cool workshop in which we were also doing some stuff with through QR codes. And I don't know, like Marko, how is this question for you? Like with the future of the web, what do you see happening?
Well, maybe just quickly to also refer to the previous question about exhibiting web art. I think the way how Tansy approached it is great. I mean, I think it's a work which works in both contexts perfectly well. For me personally, the web was always really about also this accessibility and also a certain personal space, because most people, no matter whether they enter the web on their phone or whether they're sitting at home with a laptop, usually it's in some sort of personal space where they experience it. So for me, there is a certain intimacy with which I usually imagine when I make something for the web, when I imagine how people are going to use it. And so for me, this is something that is very interesting about it. And therefore, I would never cross my mind to do something for the web only with the purpose to put it in a museum. So I would agree with Olia that it should stay on the web.
And would there be like an alternative to this? Because of course we already have museums for the things we show in museums, but like for example web museums, or because I feel like now a lot is scattered and you need to kind of know it, but maybe there can be this kind of concept that becomes a generalized one. I don't know, like used to have all these when I was young, there was like this website with video games that you could do, and you had like all this list of games, like maybe something like this. Or do you have an idea?
I don't think I know this website, so I'm not sure what you're referring to. You mean like a sort of alternative way to experience such products,
like to
other than the gallery and sorry?
To have it in a space, like of course it's the main medium is the web, so it can be on the web, but maybe we could have like a kind of format, like a museum is for paintings and like everything else that is now shown in a museum, and maybe on the web there could be something that is also kind of, for example, curating WebSoundArt. Like, could you imagine something like this?
Yes, I mean that's what Eveline already started doing, isn't it?
I also wanted to say that it's exactly what WebSoundArt is here for.
That's very true. And so again, go Eveline. Yeah, you actually, Marko, you just also said something that I thought it was really interesting, and it's also maybe related to the question that came here about like the intimacy and like kind of this one-on-one feeling as well of WebSoundArt. So there was an article that was written by Philip, the third one, aesthetics. Like maybe someone can magically also make it pop up in the chat, that I thought was amazing. It speaks about like when you're on the web, you're a user, but then if you come on a WebSoundArt piece, then you kind of change your role to being a spectator or an audience member. And he was like in this article, which I really recommend reading, talking about like that we should find a way to make a transition to this. Does any one of you have ideas of how you can deal with this? So like this transition of being in this user mindset towards being more like in an art mindset.
If I can say, first of all, I would also like to, it's good that you made this transition. I wanted to thank Philip Meyer, who I don't know, but I don't see him, but I see him now here. I want to thank him for all the 3 articles he wrote. That's for analyzing the web and also paying such a close attention to it. It was really great to read it. But now, Jana, to what you are saying, it is let's not make the role of the user so primitive, as you say it. Yeah, it's great to be a computer user. It also means some agency, and that you can do things. You know how to do things online. You know how to, you know how to start the audio in your browser, how to be able to hear something. I just, and so it's just could be very complex now conversation, but I want to say, that if to make more projects like this that insist on the sound in them, like what we have now in the proposals and in the winners cases, then all this makes it also changes the perceptions of the users of what their role is, not only to look at things but also to listen. Yeah, so this is how I see it.
Yeah, like for me, it's from my own experience, it's often like when I come across those links, I'm basically like checking something on the internet. The tempo is really quick, and then you start watching a work, and it's like to get into this sense of time that is different maybe for an artwork. Like for example, Bilawa told that, you know, his piece is like 20 to 30 minutes. I've also seen like another piece with this kind of visual storytelling that I clicked through the end because I really had to like, okay, come Jana, just keep going. You want to see the end, but it felt so long, even though it wasn't. But it's like it's exactly because I'm here in my space and I'm actually thinking about my groceries or something. Whereas if I go to a concert or I go to a museum or something else, there's like this kind of transition time, you know, it doesn't randomly happen on your phone when you're on Instagram. Maybe it does. So yeah, like I don't know, who hasn't talked for a while? Kris.
But so the main question is about participation. If you want to, or is about like the duration of the.
Like how would you, or how do you see this, like how the perception is of the audience person from being like a user of a phone on websites and then being kind of a consumer of art?
So I was still processing the question. So it's not about like if you want to interact or not.
No, it's like more about like switching this mindset.
Okay. Oh, I would, if it's like forced, I don't think it should work. It doesn't work if it's like forced that way. I never thought about it. Like it should go automatically. Like I don't think there's like this border of like being like just a website and or art piece or like. Not
Yeah.
sure if I answered
But
it
like,
correctly.
for example, in your works, you also do a lot of works like interactive installations. Is there like a way how you get people to be dragged in and to really become part of this work?
Yeah, I have like it's for my own. I have like this really basic set of rules. Like if I don't like it myself, I'm not going to make it either, because sometimes I see people making things which are very technically driven from, yeah, you have a space and everybody can add instruments, and like it's very technical, like in features, but then should be something very easy, simple, which I want to do myself. And then the other thing is I also have this measurement of like 10 seconds or something. If people are not interested after 10 seconds, or it's maybe also the time spent that they're on a physical thing at the museum, yeah, that should be like already like get you going in these 10 seconds. Because after that, I don't think you can like have the assumption, okay, people will read the whole intro and then this very long introduction and how things work. And yeah, it's not my thing, or I don't feel it doesn't work well like that.
Yeah.
So rather have like a quick intro, like something which triggers you in, and then add layers on top of that after that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good system, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, it's also something which works for me as a person myself. So I'm not sure it's like a good rule for all people, all installations, but it works for me. And so.
Yeah. It's a nice piece of wisdom for all those people here that I see, that I know that they make some really nice web works. Thank you for this. By the way, talking about other people, I also need to look a little bit at the time. Marko and Olia, you can for sure also say, but does anyone have a question? You can write it in the chat or you can move your hand up. Marko, I saw that you opened your mic. So would you like to still say something about what Kris just said?
I just wanted to briefly add that actually, while this conversation has been going on, I was thinking about it, and I think this is really an interesting question about this sort of different mode of perception. And as you said, we're really used to have this sort of super fast information flow when we are on the net. And so I also have to say, when I want to see net art, it's really like a conscious decision, and I sort of have to. I mean, it's basically like when I decide to watch a movie on the computer, it's also somehow I have to take the decision to do it and put myself in a different time frame. And of course, with web art, it's something that we are not so accustomed to. So I think this is a very interesting question, if you can design sort of transitions to get into it. So in my experience, I don't have a solution for that, but it's interesting to think about it.
Yeah, very true. Yeah. I also have a question here, and because you mentioned before, Marko, the intimacy part, I'm gonna bounce it to you, but if someone else wants to ask, of course. There came the question, which role does intimacy play in the context of presentation and reception of WebSoundArt? What do you think of this? Ooh.
I think it is it plays a big role for me, with sound or not, with the web. It is made to be seen or heard, perceived on your own computer. Yeah, with your own speed, with your own habits. So, and that you are alone, maybe also. It's completely another situation. Yeah, one should work for. And it's also not only the situation about it's not only affects the mode of perception, like this impatience, yeah, that is we all have when we're on the web. It's a completely normal way of behaving. Like in cinema, you are in concert, you are immersed, and on the web, you are impatient. Yeah, I would call it. You want everything, but at once. Everything should be new, but forever, forever new. But not only this. The big thing is that when you're on your own computer, you have your own preferences. you have your own browser, you have your own screen size. There are so many things. You have your own headphones. Yes, so all these are things that belong only to you, and that you, as a creator, if you work for the web, you really can't control. When you work for the museum, for gallery, for the concert, there all this will be predefined, right? What the audience will have. And on the web, it is always like the very open question. And there is a lot of beauty in this, but of course it's very troubling for those who produce.
Thank you very much for your answer. Are there other questions? Now is the time. We have three amazing panel members that are very wise, as we've seen already. So, who is wondering something more? If that's proper English, but you know what I mean. Like anyway, while you are all thinking, I have to
Yes.
say, like this conversation. Yes, Bilawa. One sec. I
Yeah.
think if we saw like once more, like wow, if you see how much we gathered in 1 year, like with all those articles and stuff, I think it's great. The resources, and I think the chat also showed it once more. Like, oh, here's an example that we spoke about with WebSoundArt, and here. So that's really great. But Bilawa, now it's your turn. You had a question.
Yeah, I just kept stuck with what Olia said about what this clicking to allow sound to play. Somehow it stuck with me because it's one of the technical problems I face when I develop, is that Tone.js require that the user interact. However, because I'm hacking a game engine and I don't want it to be like a game, so I hack all of these buttons, all of this opening scene, etc. And it sticks to me until this come, because then the question is then, of course, why it's not allowed. Okay, it can be annoying, it can be used for yeah, it somehow disturbed the user probably, but then it also make the questions, at least for me, who decides that? Is there a power or a certain system that somehow decides this, and how far that it can go? Like you said, probably if visual information becomes too annoying, then one day in the near future, then to show something visually, it also requires some sort of an action, and what consequences it will have to us in art creation, for example.
So there is simple answer. It's not only about the annoyance, but it's also to protecting the privacy, because a lot of things we just talked about, that the web is perceived in at home, but let's not forget that more and more it's actually used in public spaces on mobile devices. And if your if your sound on your phone starts to play automatically, you will also not like it. Yeah, yeah. So so it is also to protect you and to address your needs. So users also don't like that it's automatically played, but it was not always like this, so the technology was not adjusted like this, and a lot of older web projects and my own web projects, not so old one, I had to remake them because I want that sounds starts automatically, for example. Yeah. So I had to. It's now in some projects I have a trick how to make it, but things are developing on that all the time. Browsers are developing all the time. There will be something else, and so it's again one of these things that is very special about the web. If you want the work to continue to exist on the web, you have to update it, also technically update it, and to always deal with new features or bugs in the browsers. Yeah, they are not there once and forever.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, we have another person, Timon Kaiser, that lifted his hand.
Yes, going back to the question of interactiveness, I wonder if non-interactive but generative web sound art, web art is a thing, and how would it be perceived? Would it be perceived as consuming a video or just a media file, or would it be something that could work actually?
Yeah, I'm not a sound specialist, but like in visual creative coding or visual art, there are a lot of websites who generate these pieces which are unique like every time you visit it. So my idea of this that with sound you can do the same thing. If you have a website, it continuously generates this soundscape according to some parameters without interaction. So every time you visit it, it's like a continuously composition. That's my take on it.
Yeah, I agree. It's definitely possible, and it's been done as well. With the perception of it, it's a tricky problem. So in a way, if you don't know that it's generative, you probably won't notice a difference. It will not be a different experience than listening to a sound file. So I think probably similar like with the visual generative things, you really feel it when you revisit it several times and when you see how different it can turn out to be. Otherwise, I wouldn't know how it would feel differently than just listening to a sound file. It's a classic problem. It's not only a web problem, but in general with generative compositions. I also sometimes discuss with students, is it live or like when you compare it to fixed media composition, where you just sort of hit play and a tape runs. This is usually, if you just listen to a tape, it's usually not considered to be a live event if you hear it in a concert. So what about generative pieces? Are they live or not? I mean, they're being live generated, but there is still usually no intervention from the outside and so on. So I think the challenge here is how to make it really transparent to the users and through this transparency, make it part of the experience that it's really interactive. No, sorry, not interactive, generative, I wanted to say.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I want to say like on these generative pieces, sometimes it's just interesting to know that this thing will never occur again. So maybe the sound quality, but just like the quality of the idea that this is only happening once and you're experiencing it, and if it's coded correctly.
So you mean it's a thing that you have the feeling that you missed something if you don't stay in the installation, or the feeling that you just were lucky to perceive or to
Yeah, the latter.
hear or see something unique, and that makes it interesting.
Yeah, it depends on your mindset. Some people will think you missed something, and some people will say, okay, I got something which will never happen again, so I'm lucky.
Okay. Are there any other questions? That's really interesting, actually.
Yeah, sorry, I wanted to
Philip?
jump in. Yes, it's actually referring to what Bilawa also asked. Because writing these articles, I was thinking about why there is so much talk about visual art on the web and not so much about sound. And I found it super interesting what you said, Olia, about this back from 1995. What you called it was a big crime to have a website sound. And I just thought about why, and I think part of it is also that it's somehow I mean, you can look away, but if there's sound file playing, suddenly it's some sort of something you can't control. You can't close your ears, really. I mean, you can do it like this, but there's something a bit, how do you say this, transgressive in it, maybe, which you don't have with visuals. You can easily click it away. Maybe when there's sound, you have to find the button or so. So I was just wondering, isn't that also like a potential for being subversive, or for being somehow subverting the visual primacy of the web? And wanted to know if you know artworks that deal with that or use this sort of. I'm missing the right word, but like something that's a bit overwhelming. Yeah.
I know some works, and I know some works that don't exist anymore, and these works were really the attempts of the artists to that the tags that are in HTML that are interpreted as audio files, not as a visual things that appear on the screen, but that each HTML tag would become a sound. So, for example, artists and also students of mine were making such plugins at that moment, or add-ons that would not show the page, but play it. Yeah, that's so things like this. Yeah, and yeah, some other works. There were, but it was. I don't think it was. Yeah, there was an idea, or all it was seen that there is a supremacy, this visual supremacy, and that one can imagine it differently. And I think there was also one sort of sonic browser, but as an artistic project, but I have to look for it. I will send an email to you with this.
So Bilawa, do you still have your question? You had your hand raised, but maybe.
Yeah, probably also related to this idea of the web is primarily visual. Now I'm just like having this free thought, and what would be if there is a purist web sound art? How would it look? Because probably then we don't have any visual elements at all, and suddenly we visit a page, so to say, and if we don't see anything, and suddenly we hear something. Is this the directions, or is there a specific form that we can imagine if there is no supremacy, like Olia said about this visual element? I'm just throwing it up to play a bit.
I'm not sure if everyone saw it. This is a response to Goni Pelis's question: is WebSoundArt inherently audiovisual, or are there WebSoundArt pieces where there are no visuals? Just that you know. But so yeah, who would like to respond to Bilawa?
If I can, sorry that I've talked too much about it, but the two things I would like to mention, that in general there is a lot of interfaces now, and not only web interfaces, but a lot of things in human-computer interaction. They are moving to sound without visuals, right? All the Alexas and Siris and things like this. There is nothing to see, and such environments will develop. And I also think it's interesting to think about what the sound art could be there. Yeah. So it's not a World Wide Web, but it is a what? It is an interface. Yeah, and it can be very interesting to deal with this. And then also another aspect, which is maybe more connected to usability. Don't forget that there are also a lot of people who can only listen to the websites because they can't see or have problems with seeing. And there is quite advanced technologies behind it. So everything, if the website's made correctly, they are, you can listen to them without need to see them. Also, if it can be also, it's like that websites, you can listen to them like the podcasts, to a lot of them. So there is on technological side, there is a lot of things one can experiment with, I can think, on the web, because it is very audible.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I thought it was very interesting. I'm gonna be like, I'll wrap up if that's okay for everyone. It's been a long festival. Yeah, now it's time for the after party, wherever that is for you. But I would like to thank Marko, Olia, and Kris for this panel. I thought it was really interesting, and thank you for your questions as well. Like as Eveline mentioned, there is a Discord for WebSoundArt. So if there are some people that are still having topics or questions they want to address, you can of course also become part of this community, or you're already there and we can discuss there like further. And yeah, I want to thank everyone for their attention. I'm gonna give Eveline the last word. So Eveline, mic to you.
Yes, thank you, Jana. I think, yeah, you wrapped it up already quite well. So thank you, everyone who was part of this project. Thank you for coming. It was super nice to have you as an audience. And I would really like to continue this this discussion about WebSoundArt. And so I also sent a Discord link in the chat for those who aren't there yet. Okay, and yeah, so have a great evening. Thanks for coming and see you around.
Thank you all. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.